I made a mistake buying this bike. I think I totally wasted my money. So I know I promised you guys, I don't know, a long time ago, that I was gonna do a review on this bike, and I never did. Well, now I've done a lot of different things to it. I've upgraded some stuff, so now it's gonna be a long-term review / bike check video. And with that, by the end of this video, my plan is to make the decision, do I keep this bike or do I sell this bike? Hey, if you're new to the channel, my name is Matt. Hey, also, I've decided to start adding something to my videos, a new element, let's say. And that's gonna be tips, tricks, and things like this towards the other passion in my life, but just a little snippet of it, just little side tips. And if you haven't guessed, it's gonna be on video production and photography. So if you make it around to the end of this video, I am gonna show you how to take your lighting from this to this. Okay, now a quick disclaimer, this bike review, long-term review / bike check thing, whatever majigit it is, if you're looking for head tube angle, geometry specs, all that stuff, like, I'm not your guy for numbers. This isn't the place. That you can find that spec sheets online all over the place. You'll need to watch a video for that. If you want specific numbers, go to that. I don't know those numbers. I will go ahead and tell you the numbers that I do know, and that's the travel. It's 170 mil, like over the whole thing. So front, rear, and seat post, all three. I do know the cranks are 175 mil. I know that because I replaced those recently. If you haven't seen that video, wheel size, 29.5, 27.5. Those are the only numbers I know on this bike. If I remember more later, then I'll tell you. I mean, it's a 12 speed, 1 by. That's all the numbers for now, I think. First things first, the frame. Whitey. No, we're not doing that. In case you guys didn't know, I went with an aluminum frame. Reason being is I don't trust carbon. I knew that this was gonna be an all-around bike, a lot of downhill stuff, and it just seems like too many people break carbon frames at downhill parks. So I would rather my bike get scratched or dented than cracked or busted. Makes sense? It also saves you money. And the weight difference, like, dude, come on, it's like a pound. I think that's all for the frame. It's blue. The paint. I do have a little bit of paint here that is starting to kind of like wear off. It has worn off. And I think that was for my tailgate pad thingamajig, the truck diaper. Don't put a bike with dirt on it on one of those, because it just becomes sandpaper at that point. So your long trip from, you know, North Carolina back to Tennessee or something like that, and it's gonna just eat through the paint. I don't have a ride wrap on it. Who cares? You know, I don't plan on selling this thing. Or do I? Okay guys, and on to the linkage. I don't have any complaints about the linkage on this bike. I will say that after having it for about 2 months, 3 months, I started to notice kind of a weird creak that I couldn't find. I was all over the place. I was on the stem, I was in the seat post, I was in the headset. I was looking for this creak everywhere. And that was when I found a video where someone was talking about maybe creaking coming from your linkage. So I decided to take all the bolts out, cleaned them, greased them, put them back in, torqued them to spec, and guess what? The creak was absolutely gone. And I think it was this one right here on the other side. If you guys have that issue with a YT CAPRA, go there first. That's my guess. I went ahead and took all these out, cleaned them, greased them, torqued them to spec. A lot of them didn't have much grease around the head part of it, so I would do that. Make sure you wipe it clean so you don't build up any gunk afterwards. Okay, so basically to sum it up, for the frame, I like it. Now for the suspension. In the rear, we have the RockShox Super Deluxe Select. Now, here is one of the major complaints I have with this bike. Maybe the only one. It didn't come with a lock. I know, you know, you can buy a new shock that has a lockout, or you can buy, you know, a more expensive model that's spec'd out better with a lockout. Well, I know nothing about that, so tell me in the comments how I should have got something different. But my plan is to replace this thing. I still was kind of on the fence, coil or air shock. I'm gonna stick with an air shock. I just don't know which one I want to put on here, but it will have a lockout for sure. Now, other than that, it does have rebound control, which, you know, you definitely need, but I mean, I love the thing. I think it feels great. It's done me fantastic. Okay, moving on to the front. Yo, what up? All right, so it's the RockShox Yari. If you guys, it's got the debonair. I plan to put the new charger in it, something like that. I said that in the old video when I first got the bike, and I never did that. Clearly, the only thing I've done is the suspension on this bike. It's stickers. Beat me up in the comments. So overall for the suspension, plush. I like it. It could use some upgrading, but I like it. Also, while we're up here, still the stock wheel on the front, which is the DT Swiss E1900, and I mounted some Minion DDH R2s on that with the tan sidewalls for the style points. I opted not to go super wide. I had a 2.6 on here on the front before, but I went back to the 2.4 for rolling speed and weight and all that stuff. Let's go ahead and dive into the drivetrain. Driving into the drivetrain. Okay, so this is the area that I've really kind of updated the most. I did not change the bottom brackets. Everything else, yes. Let's start at the front. So we've got the crankset, which is the Drivetrain Descendant. I upgraded from the SRAM SX, which I think I was starting at the bottom, so it doesn't matter what I got. It was an upgrade pretty much, as long as it wasn't some sort of Amazon brand. I really like these, but I do want to go back to like a shorter crank. I might do a 165. And I'm still running the 1-up pedals. I like those a lot. I haven't really needed anything different. They've grabbed my shoes just fine. It's a good size platform and enough pins, and they're fantastic. I'm still going with a 32 tooth chainring in the front, so I guess there's not really much change there. And then in the rear, we have changed the cassette from the SX to the NX. Not a big difference there. Mainly, the only reason I didn't go further than that is because the free hub body is still the Shimano HG free hub body, which only will accept a SX or NX cassette. So in order to go up with a GX cassette, I need to replace that free hub body, which unfortunately, before replacing the cassette, I had to replace this rear wheel due to a minor accident. We'll call it a minor accident. When I replaced this wheel, I decided to go with the Nuke Proof Horizon V2. It's got like 100 and a million engagement on the hub, so I mean, it's enough. Industry 9s sound really cool, but I don't know if there's that big of a difference. It's instant engagement. I mean, how much more can you get than instant, right? Anyways, that was a huge difference. That really helped out with climbing and all that kind of stuff. Even jumps and pumping, because there wasn't that weird section of nothing, if that makes sense. I may need to stop texting me. Okay, and the other huge difference that I made, other than the instant engagement, is the GX. So the SX shifter did not have a clutch, evidently. Or if it does, it's a very weak one that's basically not a clutch. The GX, on the other hand, is much stiffer, it shifts much quicker, it's just more precise, the indexing is way easier to dial in, no chain slap, it's silent. The only thing you hear, other than the free hub, is the tires on the dirt, and I love that sound. Yeah, if you're running the SX, probably even the NX, I'd highly recommend upgrading to the GX. It's like 135 bucks or something like that. I mean, come on, that's a killer upgrade. Drivetrain, started out not really liking it. Now, I really like it. On up to the cockpit of the bike. Cockpit. To finish off the drivetrain, I guess, we didn't mention this part, was the shifter. I did replace the shifter to the GX. Also a huge difference. I mean, if you haven't done that one yet, come on, go ahead and do that one. It's cheap. Super, super noticeable upgrade. For brakes, haven't changed anything. The levers, they're still the Guide REs, as well as the calipers, everything like that. I have replaced the pads on the rear. It's all done with the brakes. I like them. Some people complained about SRAM. I like SRAM. Have not done anything with the bars yet. I do plan to put a riser on there at some point, maybe go with like a 30 mil rise, 35 mil rise, something like that. As of right now, it's still what it came with. I think it's a race face effects, something or other. I know it's 800 watt. That's another number, 800. There's another number. I haven't cut them down. I did replace the stem. We've got the box stem. It's a shorter stem than what I had before, so there's a little bit of difference there, and it's shiny and blue, so I like it. And the grips, I've gone through all different sorts of grips. Right now, I'm using these ODE green Bontrager grips because I think they look really cool. The feel, not so great without gloves. If you have sweaty hands, it's not so grippy. If your hands aren't sweaty, yeah, cool. I have used better grips, but they're cool. They came on another bike that I got recently, which we'll talk about here in a little bit. And that's dropper post. Last thing is the dropper post. Lever, remote, trigger thing. I haven't replaced that. I looked to get a wolf tooth one because this one was giving me a lot of trouble, and then I figured out I was having an issue with it gripping the cable before, and evidently it was gripped down. It was torqued too tight and it was just cutting through the cable. So now I've got that squared away. No problems. Works great. Dropper post, same thing. Works great. There is a little bit of wear on the back. I think it needs to be serviced or something like that. I'm not sure. It still works just fine. I don't have any issues. There's a little bit of like, see that? That's all there is. I mean, it's like half a degree. Some people complain about having that. I could care less. I don't notice a difference. Okay, so I included the seat with the cockpit. So overall, for the seat cockpit, I like it. Let's just talk about the valve stems, okay? These are the muck off, supposedly like cush core ready or something like that. Insert ready. What I will tell you is they clog very easily. Every time I try to put air in this tire, I have to fight a bubble of sealant first, and it is very annoying. I need to figure out a way to fix that. If y'all know a way to fix that with these muck off valve stems, because other than that, I really like these things. I mean, they look cool. They've got the, you know, the stem remover tip, and they stay on there right, and they just drives me nuts. What's my solution to that? Okay, so I'm gonna make this extremely super comprehensive for everyone and break it up into riding styles. From what I have done to the bike, not originally, it came stock, but this bike specifically, downhill parks, it's awesome. Goes up the chairlift like a dream, goes down the mountain like a dream. It's fantastic. Enduro riding, well, I mean, yeah, it's an enduro bike, pedalable, and it's totally fine. So yes, enduro, it's great. Jumping, it's not really the best bike in the world for jumping just because it has so much travel. I mean, I guess if you're like Red Bull Rampage jumping, it's probably good. But you know, your average rider jumping, probably not the best bike. I would stick with a trail bike. A little bit less travel, a little too much here for jumps. Now, for like the big, huge jumps, I'd say it's probably awesome. I don't do those, but the people that I see doing the big jumps, they seem to like it with having more travel. Now, cross-country riding. It's a terrible bike for that. It's a mullet, clearly. Did I mention that? There's no lockout for the rear shock. It's just not a pedal bike. I mean, you can pedal it. I ride plenty of trails like that on this bike, and that's all I rode for years. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying you cannot ride cross-country on this bike, like say a downhill bike or something like that, which, I mean, you can, but you're not crazy, Cody. It's just not fun when you have to go for long climbs on that bike, since there's no lockout on the rear shock. Now, once I change that, it may be different. It may still be terrible at pedaling, who knows? But for the most part, the trails where you have to kind of crank to keep up speed, to have fun, it's not so bad. But like I said, it would be better if it had that lockout. Okay, so am I going to keep the YT Capra or am I going to sell the YT Capra? The only reason I'm wondering is I just recently got a new bike. Talk about that in a later video, but what I will tell you is it's shorter travel and it has a lockout. So I kind of got out on some trails that have, you know, a lot of pedaling, and it makes it a lot easier, and it's a little bit easier to move around since it's smaller and lighter because of the less travel. We'll talk about it later. So let me just wrap this up real quick. I'm gonna keep the YT. I'm not selling the YT. I'm keeping the YT. There's too many downhill parks around here. If I sold it, I would have to buy a downhill bike, and I don't want a downhill bike because I can only use it at downhill parks. This bike, I can use it at downhill parks and the pedal trails around here, so I don't want a downhill bike. But now with the new addition of the new bike, which we'll talk about later, I have options, and I like having options. Now, I promised you guys that I was gonna show you how I light my set, so let's go ahead and do that. So we're gonna turn all the video lights off, and we're going to start with just the lighting room itself. So let's turn some lights off. This is the lighting of the room, just normal lights on. We're gonna turn the lights off because these lights are terrible. So now we need to light our scene. So we'll start with some practical lights. This is a practical light. Now we gotta turn the light on. This lights the bike. Now that's on. Now, there's a dark spot. Okay, the scene's lit. Wait, that's a dark spot. Okay, now the scene's lit. So far we've got a practical light in the back, over the tools. We've got the RGB light over the bike, set to a warm temperature, kind of give that a warm, kind of cozy feel. The set's done. Now it's time to light your favorite. First thing that we're gonna do is we're gonna design our lighting around that light, because it is the brightest light in the scene here. So we're gonna try to make it look like that light is lighting me. We're gonna do that with this light. Oops, not that light. So we're gonna do that with that light. That light is hitting me over here. Actually, it's bouncing off the ceiling and the wall. A soft, huge light. lighting me up here to make it look like the light back here is wrapping around me. Now I've got a shadow and then there's a light over there. So that doesn't make any sense. So now I've got this light to fill that shadow to make it look like that's lighting me. So that's how I make my set. A lot of lights. Real simple though.